more because of it.
Exactly. All right. Well, it is 10 o'clock. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. So we'll get started and hopefully we have a few more people jump on. And of course, we're recording this as well. We do have hundreds of people in the Empire Masterminds Facebook page. So we do get a lot of people that do jump on, outside of the actual live class here. So
Are
we
you using
appreciate,
Kelly?
appreciate
Zoom?
that
Zoom
we
with
get
Kelly?
to do this.
No, I'm
So
using Zoom
um,
with
if you guys
Mastermind.
aren't talking, I
Oh,
would ask that you mute your microphone here, and then we'll go from there. So again, thanks you guys for joining us Wednesday morning for Empire Masterminds. We are so super duper lucky to have a wonderful guest speaker today, Hank Avink, excuse me, with National Coaching League. Hank, do you want me to do a little intro to you? I've got a nice little written one that I was sent, and I'd love to read that if you're okay with it, or do you want to kick
Sure.
in with your own
It's
background
it's
info?
your it's your show, so have at it.
Well, I'm going to read you guys this. It's an amazing introduction. Hank's been around the block, to say it nicely. He's walked the walk, and I will definitely say that sometimes when you get people teaching and coaching, they've really excelled in one avenue, and they're great at coaching or talking, but they aren't necessarily the person that's walked in our shoes. And Hank definitely has. Hank purchased his first rental property at the age of 19. And after winning a national championship as the captain of the Toledo Cherokee Junior hockey team, he quickly grew his portfolio to over 40 rental properties and was featured on the Carlton Sheets late night commercial. And not long after, he had a commercial loan call due, which ultimately led him to filing bankruptcy. And from there, Hank moved into the lending world, wanted to make sure that he understood all aspects of the real estate business. And then in 2007, he decided to get his residential real estate license as a buyer's agent and followed that progression to listing agent, building his own team, and eventually taking over and running a brokerage. And then in 2013, Hank wanted to follow his love for coaching people. So he left the leadership position at the brokerage to become a bold coach for Keller Williams, if you guys are familiar with KW and their coaching program. And he logged over 600 flights in 3 years, coaching thousands of agents. And then in a desire to really be home more with his family that was growing, in 2016, Hank decided to leave the Bold program and open his own coaching company called the National Coaching League. So now the National Coaching League is in its 8th season, and Hank has established himself as one of the top real estate and small business coaches in the country. So without further ado, thank you so much, Hank, for joining us this morning.
My mom would love hearing that introduction. How's everybody? Because we have a smaller group, is it okay if I meet you guys where you're at? We kind of open this up more for a dialogue type way of doing it. You guys good with that?
Yes.
So real quick, who's been in the business for less than a year? Okay, perfect. So who's been in the business for more than 3 years? Oh, perfect. So the question that I have for you is, how many of you are struggling right now? And probably not a fair question because it kind of puts you on blast a little bit. Where are you guys at right now? Is when we look at March 6th, 2024, is everybody's business thriving, or what are the challenges that you're having?
We're working harder than we've ever had to work.
Jennifer, I feel you. You know, what I found, if I'm looking in the mirror, when it got easy, I got a little bit lazier, meaning when the velocity of money was changing hands the way that it was. I mean, who can remember actually having a listing inventory where listings, you'd do a 6 to 12 month listing agreement, and you had to manage 10, 20, 30 listings. And I mean, it was a different game. And we got a little bit spoiled there where you'd list a home and get paid in 30 days. And that's pretty good for cash flow management, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm actually a little bit, I don't wish for hard times, but I'm okay when hard times come because it means that skill set matters again. And we're not just order takers. And when skill set matters, that's when we really have an opportunity to thrive. And so one of the modalities I'd like to teach today based on who's on here is one that I came up with is it's called income cash flow refereeing, REF. And so first thing I want you guys to do is ask yourself, do you have an income problem? Meaning, I know Jennifer and Bob and Kelly and Bruce and Angela on here, and none of them have income problems. They know how to make money. Is that a fair assessment?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you take any, 12-month snapshot, the challenge is sometimes we have cash flow problems. Who besides me has ever had a cash flow problem?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting in a therapy appointment with my wife, and little background, my kid had open heart surgery at 6 days old. And that's kind of where I drew a line in the sand and saying, I love real estate. Here's what I don't love. If I don't show up, I don't get paid. And I realized that I had to find a different way of doing it, because as much as I loved real estate, when I was forced to either choose to go to the hospital for the day or go to work, because if I couldn't choose both, because if I didn't go to work, I was going to create more problems. And one of our standards is, if you're an adult and you have a problem, don't create more problems by not being an adult. And let's face it, through life, we're going to have challenges. I don't think I've ever met anybody who's successful that hasn't had some challenges. And oftentimes we look at them and say, oh, must be nice. But typically when I find someone who's won at a high level, they've also lost at a high level, because that's where you learn. My bankruptcy, it was tough going through. I almost put a bullet in my mouth. Almost died by murder. I had a ganger say, hey, Honky, who's going to shoot who first? And I chambered a 40 caliber round. And I said, if we're going to do this, let's do it. And there were some tough times there. Can anybody relate to those tough times where you're just at the end of your rope and it's like, I don't know if I can keep doing this.
Right.
But what happens is when you've been through those tough times, it gives you a whole other level of resiliency. And that's, I think, where the real success comes from. So let's go back to cash flow. I want you to ask this question. What would it be for you to solve your cash flow problem? And as I mentioned earlier, we were sitting in a therapy appointment. My wife was 12 minutes in, and we were talking about a $20 t-shirt that she bought. And I stopped and I said, Jeff, do you have any idea how much money we make? And he goes, no, I think you do pretty well. I go, Jeff, we made $400,000 this year. And my wife's still panicking about a $20 t-shirt. And she never feels secure, and she never feels like there's enough. And so one of the things that we realized was a lot of us hang on to our old programming because of the way that we grew up, or because of challenges that we've been through. And I believe that we need to look at where we recognize old programming as serving us. So through that awareness, and I love that awareness is transformational in and of itself. So I'm going to encourage all of you to really work on having awareness. Because oftentimes, if you find out that you have stinky breath, you don't need to know anything else. But if you didn't know you have stinky breath, you just need the awareness to know that you need to go floss your teeth and do whatever it is that you do to get rid of that. So one of my goals is to help people with awareness. Well, with my wife, from a cash flow standpoint, we came up with, if we had $50,000 sitting in our money market account through the tax filter, she could breathe. And oftentimes what we end up doing is we end up moving the goalpost, because who can relate to this? First time I made 100 grand, I was like, I was like, I won the game. I never need to make more money than $100,000 yet. Once that becomes what you do, Garrett Gunderson says this: a luxury once experienced is now an expectation. And what happens is we thought that $100,000 was more than enough money that we need to make. And then what happens is we keep moving the goalpost.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm going to ask that you do is, what is it going to take for you to solve your cash flow problem for good? And then stick that goalpost, because what happens is we end up moving that goalpost. And then anytime that we're worried about cash flow, we act differently, don't we? Who's ever been in a cash flow position and your energy changes? And when your energy changes, people feel the way that you're vibrating, and you're not going to be as attractive and you're not going to be as successful. So what we do is, once you don't have a cash flow problem, you got to solve once you don't have an income problem, you got to solve your cash flow problem for good. And that's going to look different for everybody. And I don't think you should have too much cash, because then we get comfortable, right? And we got to find that balance of where's comfort, and then where's that little bit uncomfort, so that we keep going. Once we solve the cash flow problem, and here's the acronym REF, REF, relationships. Angela is a good example of a relationship. Angela needs something, I respond right away. I mean, she's important to me. If she needs something, I'm there. She's never been able to say I wasn't there for her. Haven't always had the answer that she wanted, or the right answer, or even an answer, yet she's a relationship that's important to me. So when she needs something, I'm there. Next thing is, I check my energy after every exchange with relationships. What I know about Angela is even if we have a tough discussion, my energy is always better because she comes from a level of energy which is at responsibility. Who's ever hung out with a victim before? They reach out to you and woe is me and this and that and blah, 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 blah. They suck the life out of you because they come from a victim type status. The next level is anger. You get somebody who's always pissed off. I mean, it's not fun being around somebody who's always angry, but I can handle somebody that's angry because at least they have some energy towards fixing it. In order to be in my world, you got to be at least at the level of responsibility where there's something that you could have done different. There's something that we can do to change to impact it. So if I have the right relationships, I have the right energy, I don't have to worry about, the finances because I'm not stupid. So here's what we do is we look at what are the relationships, what are the energy, and then we have Excel spreadsheets to make sure that we're not being dumb. And this is where we go into a relationship-based business. When we won a national championship, and yes, this looks like a class ring, but it is a championship ring. Much to my disappointment, they gave us a very small ring. And who thinks that my team was different to win a national championship than what it was to go buy 42 rental properties? It was completely different. In fact, most of the people that were on the team to win the national championship, none of them were on the team to go buy 42 rental properties. So here's the question I want you to ask yourself. What season are you in your business? And what team do you need? So I'm currently in a pivot. And what I mean by a pivot is you reach a goal and then you look at what the next goal is. And that next goal that I have requires a different team. So here's what I'm doing is I'm wiping the slate clean, meaning who's ever seen a lake house that's just been added onto and remodeled where they would have been much further ahead by just tearing it down. So let's look at a team. I'd like everybody to think about what is the next goal that you're going after? Who has a goal that they're going after that they'd be willing to share? Kelly, or let's go
Agent
with Christine
attraction.
because
Yeah, Christine.
So, I really need to rev up my business big time. I am a single mom, take care of my kids by myself. Their father passed away. So my focus really has not been on business so much. It's really just been to keep my family afloat. So I really need, I don't have a lot of systems in place, so need to get the systems going and really just need to rev up everything. So
and
completely vulnerable here.
well, thank you for the transparency. My wife grew up with a father that passed when she was 6. That was from suicide, which adds another whole nother layer of um, trauma and challenges. And my mom was beaten by my sister's biological dad. And so single moms have a place in my heart. And Christine, I'd be more than happy to have a one-on-one call separate from this to see if I can help even more. If you'd like to take me up on that. So, one, sorry for your loss and thank you for your vulnerability and transparency. And here's the reality. No one's coming to save you,
That's
and no
right.
one's going to save the little kids. And
Nope.
once people have acknowledged it, they don't want to talk about it, and they don't know what to say. And oftentimes, you're still going through it, and yet the world's moved on, and it's like, and that's the tough part, right? So here's what I believe that we need to be able to do. We need to be able to compartmentalize our days. So when Charlie had open heart surgery, I had to live my life 3 hours at a time and sometimes pretend my shit show of a life that was going on wasn't my actual life, just from a survival standpoint, because the only thing that can turn the open wounds and scabs into scars is time. And sometimes we don't have the luxury of time of allowing that to happen. So sometimes we have to pretend our life isn't what it is and go do what we need to do so that we don't create more problems and allow ourselves to get that time. So here's what we've come up with. So how many deals do you need to do in order to get some breathing room? Is it 12 deals? Is it 24 deals? What does that look like for you?
It's 20.
20?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So completely reasonable. How long have you been selling real estate?
7 years.
Okay, perfect. So you have some foundation underneath you, and it becomes a math equation right here. And I have this tattooed on my forearm because we can either hang out on the drama and I'm not saying this in a judgmental way. You've had a lot of drama that could cause disruption.
Yeah, no,
Completely acknowledging that.
I'm beyond that. I'm in doing mode, so for sure.
Good, good. So let's talk about the math because um, I've had to start over several times, and oftentimes what people do is they go from phase two into phase three, and I'm probably not going to give enough context for this to make sense, but when they start having success, what they do is they move into phase three and then they get comfortable. Oftentimes before I've gone into phase three, I've been willing to climb back down the mountain because the phase three of what I was doing wouldn't allow me to get to where I actually wanted to go. So sometimes you have to go backwards in order to go forward. So the goal is 20 deals. So when we look at this, we know that you can only have so many relationships. For example, Facebook says we can have 5,000 friends. Well, my father-in-law passed last year, and what made me realize that you can't have 5,000 friends, when my father-in-law passed, who was more like a dad, it rocked my world. Well, one day I was on Facebook and I saw that someone's dad died, and the extent of my emotional response was a sad face, and my day moved on. I thought, what is wrong with me? And so I realized how many relationships can you actually have? And people way smarter than me said you can balance about 120 relationships. So Christine, where we're going to focus is on 120 relationships. And here's the math behind it. If you have 120 great relationships, every single one of them all know 100 people. And Christine, I'm assuming that you would rather have referrals than leads. Would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely. That's where all my business has come from.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. And the reason we like referrals is because we're building a reputation off of the social currency that that relationship already has. So here's what we're going to do. I make this simple. If I have 36 A's, I believe that there's someone who would go to bat for me. So if I have 36 A's, there's a good chance that they're either going to buy or sell a home in the next year, or a better chance of them knowing someone who's going to buy or sell a home in the next year. If they all know 100 people, would we all agree that of those 100 people, there's someone in there that's looking to buy or sell?
Yeah.
So let's just look at the math of that. If you have 36 A's, they all know 100 people. There's 3,600 people within an arm's reach of you working with them. So here's what we got to do. We got to look at our A's and say, do we have the right A's that will go to bat for us to run across the restaurant, put someone in a headlock? And let's say that Angela knows Bob. I don't know Bob, yet Angela knows that Bob's looking to sell his home. I think with the relationship that Angela has and I have, her knowing that listing homes is important to me, she's going to go over and she's going to give a headlock referral and say, Bob, I don't know if you have an agent, yet I'm going to ask a personal favor of you to interview Hank. Now, Hank isn't everybody's cup of tea. In fact, he might irritate you a little bit, yet you do want an agent that's willing to stand up for you, right? And somebody that's going to go to bat for you and somebody who's a professional and someone who, isn't just this, hey, everybody like me. He's somebody who will go and get the job done. I mean, who doesn't want a headlock referral like that? And the headlock referrals are what's going to make our life easier. So here's what we do. We get 36 A's. And in those 36 A's, what we've got to do is we've got to know what's important to them in the next 12 months. So, Christine, what's important to you in the next 12 months? Doing 20 real estate transactions, right? So
Yes.
now that I'm aware of that and I'm an A in your life in this scenario, one of the best feelings in the world is helping someone. Would we all agree with that? That it doesn't cost you anything, but knowing that you can help a single mom go help take care of her children, and all you had to do is go a little bit out of your way to give a headlock referral, people would do that all day long. So here's what I want you to do. Write down your list of your 36 A's, and here's what an A might look like. Somebody that you're talking to on a regular basis, someone that you care about, someone that has the same values, someone that goes to the school with you, someone that's a workout partner, people that you actually care about. And here's how you can start to identify your A's. Look at your phone. Who are you responding with? Now, we also know this. You are the company that you keep. So, for example, my marriage is very important to me. One reason I love Angela so much is so is her marriage. So is how she looks at her family unit, because I know that with Angela having the same values, if I'm ever not doing the right thing, she's going to say, hey, Hank, how would Sarah feel about this? Or, hey, is that the dad that you really want to be? Because when you run with people that have the same values, it's going to help you raise to that level. Do we all agree with that? So when we're looking at our 36, here's what I want you to do. if I help them win, what are the chances of me winning? And when you get the right people around you, because you'll never outgive a giver. Let's sit there for a second. How many of you are givers where if somebody does something for you, you don't want to owe them anything and you're keeping an internal score? And if they help you, you want to help them back. Now, what you got to be able to do is you got to be able to identify takers, because if you give to a taker, they'll start to suck the life out of you. It's like having a hole in your boat. So if we have the right 36 people and you pour into them and you help them win, and know this, you don't necessarily need to help them win in areas that you think. If you can help them be a better mother or a better father or a better husband, know that it's the law of reciprocity. And if they know that your goal, your number one goal is to do 20 real estate transactions, how many of you think that they will go out of their way to help you get to those 20?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So here's what we're looking at is we've got to identify 36 A's and 96 B's. Now, you might be quick at math, which I'm not. I'm only good at 3% math. Some of you will get that later. Yet 36 plus 96 doesn't meet 120. However, it's pretty close. So if you have 36 A's and 96 B's and you focus on those 120-ish relationships, all the deals that you could ever ask for are in those 120 relationships. So how do we do this? We do this by being human. So write those words down. We know that we learn more when we write things down. Be human, which means you're not trying to be everything to everybody. Now, anytime I have a new goalpost, what I do is I look at what is that goalpost, who are my A's, who are my B's, and then I make math on my side. So the next thing we're going to talk to is 50-25-1, which is tattooed on my wrist. And this math formula has made me millions of dollars in different revenue streams. And I say different revenue streams because it's not just been done in one, it's not been done in two, it's been done in over 3 revenue streams since 2016. So when we look at this, here's what we do. Every single day, we've got to get in front of 50 people. See, because when I've studied myself and other people that have built relationship-based businesses, sometimes we get to December and we're like, can we do it again? We don't have systems in place. I don't know how I do it. I just do a good job and referrals come my way. But if somebody wanted to come and shadow me, I'd be like, I don't know. I've just been doing it for 7 years. I've been doing a good job. I'm a likable person. Yet that doesn't really help us to be able to get a predictable result. So here's what we come up with, 50-25-1. How do you get 50 people a day to see you? Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you see them. We just got to get them off neutral. So think back to 2007. How do you think it was to get into residential real estate in 2007 in Michigan? The joke was with our state, hey, last one out, turn off the lights, because we were big automakers. And so I made the wise decision to buy a Prius in Michigan. Who thinks that was a dumb idea? Probably not the brightest move. To make it even worse, I wrapped it with my face on it, and it was the worst picture you could have. It was like, I mean, it was cheesy. Yet here's the thing. Did I ever have to introduce myself as a real estate agent, or did my marketing speak loud enough where everybody just knew? Now, here's the thing. It got people off neutral. So you want to get 50 people a day off neutral, because if you're neutral, they don't remember you. Who thinks that people remembered me when I drove a Prius with my face on it, and they all had a laugh at my expense? And I remember pulling up to a listing once, and I told them I came in a marked car and that I had my face on me, so they knew, because sometimes sellers don't want that. And he goes, "Get that," I think he said, "rice burning piece out of my driveway." I said, "Whoa, that was pretty aggressive. You having a bad day?" And he goes, "I work for blah, 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 blah." I was like, "Hey, man, I'm sorry. Gas is $5 a gallon. Unfortunately, your automaker doesn't make a car that I can afford to drive. And I'm hoping one day I can afford a car like you have right there. I have a wife, I have a child, and all I'm trying to do is take care of my family." Who thinks that with that pattern interrupt, he became human? He went from being angry to taking responsibility that he was punching down. How many of us know that you can't punch down in this world because you look like a bully?
Mm-hmm.
I was able to turn that around. Yet here's the reality is I got people off neutral by driving that car. And if you can get 50 people a day off of neutral, that's 18,000 connections over the course of the year. If you have 18,000 connections over the course of the year, do you think that there's 20 deals in there, Kristen? 100%. So now once we go from the 50, now there's a mutual energy exchange. And remember before COVID when we used to shake hands? That was my joke. I would love to do stand up someday, but probably not a good idea. But when you shake someone's hand, there's an energy exchange, isn't there? Who's ever shook someone's hand and it's like, dude, like, great, you're strong and you just crushed my hand. Do you feel better about yourself? Or then you shake someone's hand and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm married and I felt something I probably shouldn't feel with another female. So, I'm just going to back off here. The reality is, the 20 is where you have that energy exchange, and we call that a handshake. Now, if you have 20 contacts, as they used to talk in the bold, we know that of those contacts, not all of them are going to be an exchange where you want to move forward with them. So you have 20 contacts in order to have 5 conversations. Now, what does a conversation mean? Here's what a conversation means. There's an exchange of information. Christine, when you were vulnerable there, you were able to let me know that you're a single mom, that you're a widow. My mother-in-law is recently widowed. When you can be human and be vulnerable and you can relate, that's going to allow our relationships to start to move forward. Would we all agree with that?
Yes.
Like you can have a basic understanding and empathy, and that's where you're going to start to insert not judgment, but you're going to start to put into your mind, well, what's that like going through that? I know what it's like, and you start to empathize and start to see somebody as a human. So we talked about Facebook earlier. Once I get to the 5, my modalities, I want to get them friends on Facebook because then they can start to experience me as a human. If people can start to experience you as a human, they're going to be able to start to know, like, and trust you by you effectively working your Facebook. Now, here's your goal, is to have one conversation a day where you can remember where you were when you had it. Who's ever had a conversation like that? I still remember where I was, Angela, when you introduced Dave Fry to me. Dave Fry and I had a 15-minute conversation. And next thing you know, he's driving to Kalamazoo. I was standing right by my recycling bin. Dave calls me up, and I remember talking to him, and I was like, I kind of like this guy. And then 15 minutes later, he's driving to Kalamazoo with a $5,000 check, and I'll forever remember having that conversation where we were. If you can have one powerful conversation a day where you connect as a human being, that's 365 over the course of the year. 365 times 100, there's 20 deals within there, Christine. And you never know where that one conversation that has nothing to do with real estate, but then they know somebody that connects you in that real conversation, digs down and gets the root. So where you get a headlock referral, and it really helps move that forward. So here's what I'm going to ask that you do, Christine, and I'll make a bet with you, and I'll bet any amount of money that you want. If you do 50, 25, 1 every single day, 12 months from now, you will have no need to worry about business for the rest of your life, as long as you continue doing it.
I love that. That's awesome. Thank you.
Now, it's simple, it's not easy. So think about, now that you've been introduced to this concept, you're at a conscious incompetence. We want to move from a conscious incompetence to a conscious competence. So, Christine, what gets measured can get improved. So, what I'm going to ask that you do is every time that you have a 50, I'm going to ask that you check it off. Now, when you're behind goal, we have to happen to it. When we're on goal, it can happen to us. So, for example, I sent out an email this morning. I saw that a couple thousand people opened it. So because I'm on goal, that's a couple thousand 50. I mean, I don't have to actually have an exchange, but because I'm on goal, that counts because somebody saw my marketing, somebody did something to it and opened it. Some people unsubscribed, and then that's where we put in a system. We create if-then statements. If somebody unsubscribes, I go to Facebook and I unfriend them. Subtraction leads to multiplication. When you realize that someone's not somebody that you want to do business with, subtract them so you can make room for new growth. It's like when you prune a tree. Sometimes you have to prune a tree in order for 2 buds to come. So, Christine, one of the things I want you to think about is creating if-then statements. If I have a good conversation with someone, I'm going to go find them on social media. I'm going to find them on Instagram, or we're going to find them on Facebook. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do 50, 25, 1 from a social aspect. We're going to like their post. That's going to help us with the algorithms. We're going to see something where we can comment, and we're going to get an exchange back and forth, because, Christine, If I see you comment on Angela's and I see Angela comment back, you automatically get another level of social currency with me because I know Angela and what her standards are to communicate with people. Are we starting to see how we can get the social effect of playing off of other people's relationships to give us social credibility? So if I see Angela comment on your thing, I'm already in a relationship with Angela. I'm going to refer to Angela, tie Christine back into it, and that's where we start to get that network web effect. Everybody following with me so far? So in this instance, liking the post is part of the 50, commenting is part of the 20, and then we want to look at, without being creepy, how do we upgrade that conversation? So you might slide into their DMs. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to be socially, what's the word I'm looking for? Have social intelligence. Am I going to slide, Christine, you're around the same age. Am I going to be very careful sliding into your DM? Probably different than I'm going to slide into Bob's because of probably all the creeps that you have. So I'm going to have social emotional intelligence around how I'm doing that. And so when we do that, what we want to do is we want to upgrade the conversation to where we can get somebody on the phone call and actually look to how we can serve them. When you rinse and repeat this, what you'll find is by doing 50-25-1 every single day, the math is there to work. So I said this was going to be an exchange of conversation, but I've probably gone on for 7 minutes now. What questions, thoughts, or comments do you have? Anybody?
I think I'll ask about the 50-25-1 because yes, we know it, and I know how powerful it is if you stay consistent. Like, how did you approach just staying consistent with this?
I think that's a great question. So everybody write down these 2 words: switch cost. Switch cost is, I believe I first heard it via Tony Robbins. There's nothing new. So even everything that I preach, it's just a different version of somebody else's. Switch cost is this: how do you make the pain of not doing something greater than the pain of doing it? How do you make the pain of not doing something greater than the pain of doing it? So, Christine, when you do 20 transactions, what's your average commission?
Maybe about 13,000.
Dang, that's awesome. So if we look at that 13,000 times 20 is $260,000. So when I look at this, I would take 260,000 and divide it by 365. So that's $712 a day. Now, Christine, how many listing appointments do you think you've gone on in your career? Hundreds?
No, not that much. Again, I really haven't given real estate my full attention. So no, definitely far less than that. I don't
Dozens?
know, maybe 50.
How many listing appointments have you set and then not gone on?
0. I've gone to all of them.
So what I'm showing is a pattern that if you set an intention, you have the ability to follow through. And what I find is what causes people to go on listing appointments because they're fully aware to go on this listing appointment, the reward is very close. What we've got to do is we've got to get that same clarity with doing 50-25-1. So Christine, if at the end of the day you hadn't done 50-25-1, you had to take $712 and burn it, would that make it a little bit more painful not to do your 50-25-1?
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
And so what we've got to do is we've got the challenges with not doing 50-25-1, the pain of not doing it's too far out. So we've got to accelerate that pain so that it's sooner. Because I know this, Chris, you've done enough, not only with me. I get that I'm better looking than most. I obviously have a better hair than most. I get that I articulate myself better than most. I know that 50-25-1 only works for me. It's not the truth. The reality is we've had hundreds of agents do 50-25-1 for 12 months straight, and I've watched the transformation for their business, so we have a lot of evidence. Christine, like I said, I'll bet any amount of money. If you do 50-25-1 for 12 months straight, what will happen is you'll have planted so many seeds that for the next 12, 24, 36 months, as those seeds get watered, I find that once people have done it for 12 months straight, they never have to worry about business again. They just need to maintain, and it's easier to maintain than what it is to get to something. So switch cost. How do you make the pain of not doing something greater than the pain of doing it? If you knew that it was going to cost you $712 by when you laid your head on the pillow, if you didn't do it, would you be more likely to do it? Yep. So what we got to
Yes.
do is we got to accept that pain of not doing something. So it can be through, burning money. It could be through having 7 piles of $712 in front of you. And every time that you do it for the day, you can take that money and keep it. And every time you don't, you send it to somebody else, like the Democratic Party or someone, or the Republican Party, someone that you don't want to promote, especially during an election year. I can already feel the energy get a little bit higher when I mention politics. Here's my point. If you can make the pain of not doing it greater than the pain of doing it, you'll have a greater chance of success. So, Christine, what's worked in you in the path of committing to doing something? And there's the key right there is you've got to commit. Most people are too interested, they're not committed. What can you tell me? What's the difference between being interested and committed?
Well, I think there has to be, the why. There has to be a really strong why behind, motivating factor of why I'm doing something.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I don't know if you guys know my old mentor, Diana Kokoska. I remember going to her house once. We were sitting on the back porch, and it was just the two of us. And I said, Chris or Diana, can I talk freely? She goes, yeah, of course, Hank. I go, if one more person tells me they don't know their why, and that's why they're not doing it, I'm going to kick them right in the nuts. That's what I said to her. Not appropriate for you guys, however. And I go, and I agree with you on the why. I think the why is a great driver. What happens to personal integrity of saying, hey, I'm going to do this and I'm just going to do it? Meaning failure is not an option. I agree. Some of us need the why, but until we find that why, sometimes what we got to do is just say, you know what? I expect my kids to do something. Hold them to a level of accountability if I'm not willing to do it. So, Christine, here's what I'm going to ask. Whether it's your why, whether it's your integrity, Christine, you're someone who does 50-25-1 every single day without failure. Can I hold you to that standard?
Absolutely.
So you have your peers on here. How many of you guys respect Christine on this call? So what I'm going to ask that you do is ask her, has she done her 50-25-1 all week? And if not, I want you to not respect Christine. Because she's saying that it's important to her. She's saying that it's something that she knows that if she does. And did you say you had kids?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many?
Two.
Two. And what are their ages?
16 and 20.
16 and 20. Okay. When you do 20 deals, does it make their life easier with you making $260,000?
Yes.
So by you not doing 50-25-1 every single day, from my perspective, now that we're getting a little bit more context, you don't care about your kids. Because if you do 50-25-1 every single day, you know that $260,000 in the compounding effect, that makes their life much easier because one, it makes your life easier. And if you're 16 and 20, you're also worried about your mom and you want to still help her. And the last thing we ever want to be is a burden on our kids. Who would agree with that statement is one of my number one goals in life is not being a burden on my kids. So when we can do switch cost, when we start putting that level of integrity and we start putting that level of pressure on us, it doesn't become an option not to do it. I remember once I went to Walmart to finish my 50-25-1 because I said I was going to do it. Now, the thing that I was doing 50-25-1 for was actually in Springfield, Missouri, and I wasn't going to get any results going to Walmart. Yet here's what happened to my subconscious brain. And I put in explicit, this guy is not going to let us go to bed without doing our 50-25-1. It's silly for us to be going to Walmart at 11 o'clock at night to talk to the Toothless Wonder when our goal is in Springfield. But if he's not going to let us go to bed, why don't we get it done when it's actually going to matter? Is everybody tracking with me on this? Your conscious mind is the goal setter. Your unconscious mind is the goal getter. And when you're committed to something, Christine, your subconscious is going to say, hey, we're at a stoplight. Let's send a message. I'm not promoting it. I'm just saying your subconscious is going to find ways to squeeze that 50-25-1 in between everything else that you're doing. Are you tracking with me? So Angela, back to it. You've got to become a master of switch cost. For me, it was if I didn't do my 2 appointments a day, which at the time I didn't know about 50-25-1, my wife was going to divorce me and end up marrying another man. And there was going to be another man walking my child down the aisle. Like I pictured what it'd be like to have another man that I didn't respect speaking into my children on a daily basis because I didn't do my one thing, which was the 2 appointments. I mean, I went that extreme where what's going to happen if I don't do what I need to do on a daily basis? What are the downstream effects? Now, some people would say I get a little bit extreme, yet when I look at the one thing that I got to do to prevent that, it's 2 appointments a day. 50-25-1 leads to 2 appointments a day. And then we get extremely focused on what really matters. Does that answer your question, Angela? And I'd like for you to add or give a difference of strategy on what you see work.
No, I think that was a perfect answer. I think I'm a pretty disciplined person. And when I was more operating at a high level, it certainly just came down to that focus. I mean, when I was previously a team leader, all I focused on was the 2 appointments a day, right? 2, 10, 40. And so nothing else really mattered. So it's when you get systematic and create that habit and stay committed to it is when the results will start to come. I mean, that's when I had my greatest results, was just staying committed to what mattered most.
And you had accountability partners with it, like your operating principal or
Right.
your owners of the company. My best accountability partner ever was my 5-year-old asking me when I came home, Daddy, did you get your 2 appointments today?
Right.
And if I said yes, he could turn my phone off. If I said no, here was his script that I gave him. Daddy, what came up today that was more important than Mommy and I? How am I going to answer that question? The copier broke. I had an agent that was angry because blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, if I consistently got my 2 appointments, I had nothing to worry about. And so the question is, how can you make the important and not make the urgent important and do the most important thing, which is the 50-25-1? Now, here's the greatest thing about 50-25-1. Here's my success code. You got skill set. Christine, you don't have an unconscious competence when it comes to 50-25-1 right now. So you're going to have to work on your skill set. Once you work on your skill set, you need time on task, and you're experimenting right now because you don't know the right activities yet that will get you easily to the 50-25-1. But as you get some victories, you'll get confidence. And then once you get confidence, you end up in momentum. Who's ever been in momentum in their business? Where like you're just going along and everything's just coming your way. Now, here's where 50-25-1 becomes really important. If you keep doing 50-25-1, you can stay in momentum. And when you are in momentum, 50-25-1 becomes easy because you don't have to be dead to it. You can receive it. So if I do a Facebook Live video and I have 20 people comment on it, that counts. If I do a picture with my daughter and I get 50 people to like it, that counts. You know why? Because when you're on momentum, it's much easier to keep it going. Would we all agree with that? So take me up on this bet, Christine. Do 50-25-1 every single day. And I bet that you have your 20 transactions. And if you don't have your 20 transactions, I bet that you are on track to blow that out of the water. Now, here's what I'm going to encourage everybody to do. Write these words down: destructive abundance. Be careful of destructive abundance because it actually works against us. What I see with a lot of agents is they get into destructive abundance and they stop doing the great job that they did for their clients, and they stop getting headlock referrals. They get too busy where they can't do those little touches that they used to do, and then they wonder why their business goes like this. As your business starts having you have more deals coming in than what you can handle, then what I want you to do is I want you to raise your standards, just like we did with buyers. There's a point in my real estate career where if Jeffrey Dahmer called me up for a showing at 5 o'clock on a Friday night, I'd show up. Then there was a point where I'd ask questions like, hey, Jeffrey Dahmer, are you pre-approved? Will you be paying cash? Are you working with another agent? You start raising your standards. So anytime you get an outcome that you don't desire, your hair stands up on the back of your neck. You find out that Jeffrey Dahmer is actually a serial killer. Every time you get an outcome that you don't desire, you put new standards in place. So for example, I have a client that her husband went to the Mayo Clinic. She didn't compete for listings. Somebody called her for a listing, she'd say, hey, who am I competing against? Well, I'm competing against Angela. Angela's great. She'll do a fantastic job for you. I'm going to withdraw from showing up for the listing appointment. Well, why would you do that, Hank? Well, because I have more than enough business and I'm not willing to compete for business, because if I just take care of my clients that want to work with me, I know I have all that I need. I'm not willing to go spend 4 hours on a CMA, 4 hours on the appointment, 8 hours for business that I don't need. I'm sorry that Kelly didn't give you a strong enough referral to let you know that I don't compete for business. Who would like to be at a spot where you're not competing for business and you have that high of standards? Now, did Sarah lose business by having that high of standard and turn some people off? Yeah, but guess what? She didn't need more business. What she needed was she needed a higher quality business. And some people appreciated the fact that she only took on so many people to work with so that she could do an outstanding job. Any other thoughts or questions?
I would just make a comment that, we did a couple coaching sessions with Hank, and when Bruce and I were digging deep for, really just looking at, are we grown-ups, first of all, and can we handle our business like grown-ups? Do we have the integrity to do what we say we're going to do? But, even Bruce and I took it to that next step where, like Hank said, he had his kids say, hey, Daddy, what was more important than me? I looked at Bruce, I said, we should be saying that to each other. What was more important to you today than me? And that us and our relationship and getting where we want to go. And that was pretty powerful for us. So, we use that. We look at each other now and we say, what got in the way of you doing what you're supposed to do, that now you're affecting us in our future. So that's a powerful statement for sure.
And that's a huge thing of switch costs. Now, Bruce and Keller are a great example. We were looking at maybe coaching together one-on-one. And when I looked at my next pillar post, it was like when you work with buyers a lot and then you're switching to listings. We chose not to work together because I was moving into a different arena, and it's called the myth of the low-hanging fruit, because with where Kelly and Bruce were wanting to go, it wasn't where I was wanting to go. And if I chose to work with them, it was pulling against where I was actually looking to go to. Now, here's where people have trouble with that is I could have worked with them. I would have enjoyed it. They would have won. I would have won, but it wasn't moving in the direction that I wanted to go. And sometimes you have to go backwards in order to go forwards. Because if I worked with Bruce and Kelly, what was I going to get more referrals from? What the goal that they were going after. So if their goal is different than the goal that I'm going after, we don't want to build our reputation around where we're not going. Is everybody making sense with that? So for example, you might work with someone 60 miles away when you're in phase one. Well, at some point, you don't want to work with somebody 60 miles away because that's not where you want to build your referral base from. So you will raise your standards and say, I'm sorry, I'm not willing to work that far out. And what we've got to be able to do is we've got to have a constant balance of raising standards so we have less deals coming in, or we got to lower our standards a little bit to have more deals coming in. And it's basic economics, right? Any other questions or thoughts?
The only thought I have, and it's going back to how do you stay consistent, because I've struggled with that, and part of it is just not having enough accountability. But it's really going back to what you've probably taught in Bold as well, is the point far theory.
Yep.
Because our programming leads to our thoughts, right? Which leads to our feelings, which then leads to actions and then results. And so if you're finding yourself not staying committed to that act, you got to really go backwards and look at what are my thoughts and what am I feeling that is causing me to not take action. And that's just, I'm speaking to myself, because when you do and stay committed, right, you get that momentum and then the confidence goes up. But if your confidence isn't there, it's probably something with your thinking and then your feeling. And so it can just really get you out of the consistency. So I just be aware of that, understand that, and go back to it. So that's where I struggle.
In point far is something that's completely changed my life. And if you guys are interested, I can give you a quick exercise that can help that. Would you like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anytime you have a feeling that you choose not to have, it's something screwed up in your programming. Because if we have a feeling that we choose not to have and we get into action, that's a reaction. And if we react in life, we're not going to have the outcomes that we're looking for. So anytime you have a feeling that you choose not to have, I'm going to ask that you just jot it down and jot it down so that you can digest it later and really dive into it. So because we're talking about lead generation, if you have a feeling and you're not excited about lead generation, make note of that. Well, if you're not excited about lead generation, it tracks back to your programming because something's wrong in your programming where if your programming is such that it gives you a bad feeling, it's lead generation sucks. I'm going to be rejected, yada, 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 versus lead generation is great. If I lead generate, I don't have to worry about my daughter being walked down the aisle by a man that I don't like or trust. And if I lead generate, I don't have to worry about that ever becoming the case. And my reasoning for that is when I met my wife, I was going bankrupt. And when she believed in me, I said, there will never be a time where I'm not providing for my family. And if there is, I'll self-sabotage so she can go find a real man to take care of the family. And again, chauvinistic, I get it. It's my own program, my own thoughts. Yet when I looked at my programming around lead generation was, if I lead generate, I don't have to worry about anything else in my life as far as providing. So anytime you have a feeling that you choose not to have, make note of it. My assistant of 7 years dumped me on Facebook. One day I went to message her and I was like, we're not friends. And I smiled. Why do you think I smiled when I saw that I was unfriended by my assistant, who I loved and cared deeply about? Why did I smile?
Because she listened to you.
Nope. Nope. Here's why I smiled. Every tough time I've had in my life or any big loss that I've had in my life, I've ended up 10 times better having gone through that. That's the last outcome that I would have wanted was her unfriending me on Facebook. And I knew that I was going to be in a position to learn and in a position to do better. So I have that feeling because whenever I used to have losses, I'd get pissed off and I'd, get angry or victimish. But I know even the bankruptcy, I'm forever grateful for going through the bankruptcy. It almost had me pull a bullet in my mouth, and I'm not using that lightly. I mean, it brought me to my knees. Yet I can tell you, when you've gone through bankruptcy, does it make it much easier to sit across from someone losing a home? I remember once a seller said, you don't know what it's like to lose a home. I said, you're right. Because when I lost a home, I lost 40 of them. So I don't know what it's like to lose just one. Who thinks when you've lost at that level, it gives you a whole nother level of empathy and understanding. Also, the ability to kick somebody in the butt when they need to get going because no one's coming to save them. So what happens is anytime I have a loss, I actually look at it and smile and say, well, it didn't kill me, so we're going to learn from this, and it's going to be brutal for the next year, but we're going to get through this. That's a much healthier attitude than me being angry at her. I put her through real estate. I offered her to move into my lake home. I blah, 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 blah. No, that's victim language. Woe is me. What I do know is it gave me some blind spots that I'm aware of. So it's not my wife that's unfriending me on Facebook. There's some things that uncovered that I was missing with my wife. And I'd sacrifice the relationship with my assistant to give me a better chance to celebrate my 20th year this year. 20 years of marriage. Super proud of that. I mean, it's taken a lot of work, and if I had to lose some relationships and uncover blind spots along the way to secure that relationship, I'll take it all day long. So change the way you look at things, an old bold law. Change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Absolutely.
And if you want to study point far, check out T. Harv Eker with the Millionaire Mindset. Millionaire Mind or Millionaire Mindset? T. Harv Eker, he has some great exercises on it.
Awesome. Hey, we're 20 years too this year, buddy.
Are you really?
20-year club. Yeah.
Awesome. How many happy?
Nice.
Yeah. I'm going to say 20 and you better say the same thing, buddy boy.
I am staying out of this conversation. 20.
Oh man, I haven't had 20 happy years. Some of those years were rough, and frankly, it was sheer will and determination to make it through it. Like when Charlie had 9 months of around the clock care, and we had a toddler. I mean, it was everything we had to keep it together, and it was a lot of work. And I mean, I'm thankful that we've gotten to this place, and I'm excited, and I truly believe that we can make it another 20 and then another 20 after that.
For sure. Just to comment on your the point far part, and the reprogramming. I know we've all been there where, if you hate lead generation, let's say you're making those phone calls and you get the one that works and you're just like, after that, you're just so excited, right? And it just feels good. And you're like, hey, that wasn't that hard. I made 10 calls today and I got a couple appointments. It's just doing it. And like you said, just reprogramming your brain in a different way of, why is this important? Always just think I'm coming from contribution. It might not be their day. They might not be ready to hear from me, or they might not have a specific need, from me or for me today, but I'm always going to, think about it as I'm coming from contribution. I'm here to help. I'm just reaching out. And is today the day that I can help you? If not, that's okay. I'm moving on. Right. But whatever it takes, just reprogramming it so that you're continuing to just do the activities.
Kelly, I used to circle prospect and I knew in an hour I could do 100 dials. And Christine, back to your thing, in my mind, I was like, I've got to have 99 people hang up on me for that one single mom that needs me to come in and do it. So that, and Patrick O'Brien was a terrible agent in our area. And I go, if I don't make these phone calls, she's going to end up working with Patrick O'Brien. So that was one way that I worked with. How did I make the pain of not doing something greater than the pain of doing it? And I had that real human being on the other end where I was like, I just got to get that one person. I'm going to have to get through the other 95. But I knew my math. If I circle prospected for an hour, I'd end up having 20 people answer. I'd end up having 5 conversations and I'd get one listing lead every single time that I did it. For every 2 hours, I knew that I'd end up with a listing. And for every listing that I took, I ended up with another sale. So I knew 2 hours worth of dialing was 2 deals. Mm-hmm. And when you focus on the math and who you're really looking to work with, it just becomes rinse and repeat, right?
Yep.
So on that note, here's you guys have access to me. If you need something, reach out to me. Facebook usually is the best way or workplace. You'll never be able to say I wasn't there for you. You won't outproduce me. And what I mean by that is I'm in the trenches too doing work. I might have a little bit bigger shovel. And I believe that results matter, meaning if you're using a spoon versus an excavator, it's going to be unfair results, not necessarily the same amount of work. And you get 3 strikes with me. First strike is I educate you. I just had someone that scheduled a call with me this morning and she didn't show up. Hey, that doesn't work. Like I can't afford to have somebody not show up on a call. Second time is I'll warn you. Hey, you know what? This is something that could have been handled by just going into the world or Googling it. I could get Glenn Sanford on the phone right now, but I'm not going to ask him a question that's below his pay grade. How many of us need to respect others and keep things at their pay grade and not burn resources and not be what I call an asshole? I'm not going to Glenn unless I have to go to Glenn because I can't burn that relationship capital. And then 3 strikes, we just never talk again. And now when I share this with people, some people get turned off by it, but then other people respect it and think, you know what? Yeah, with Hank having 3 strikes, he's there for me, but I can't waste his time because that's the one equalizer for all of us, right? So if you ever do need anything, just reach out. Let me know if it's urgent or if it's important. We can schedule calls and I'm here to help you. My number one goal is to help you outgrow me and not need me. So Christine, if you're interested, we are doing a run through on 36 to Life. Friday from 10 to 1 Eastern, where we go deeper on these. And we're only allowing 18 people on there. You'd be 19 if we're already at 18. And here's my model of it. Help enough people get what they want. And when you do that and you come from contribution, some people are going to want more proximity. And the more proximity you want, there's more filters involved. And it can watch a Super Bowl on TV for free. To be on the field, that's earned, right? And so if you'd like to join us, feel free to message me and we'll get you a link for that.
And I did put Hank's
Kelly, Bruce, Bob.
Oh, I just did put your National Coaching League information and whatnot in the chat box, you guys. So you do have Hank's website and his phone number. So, he's got some fantastic programs that you just talked about. You pivoted so that you're kicking into some new coaching programs. So if you guys are interested, feel free to definitely check that out. So any other questions before Hank leaves?
I got a call at the top of the hour. Here's what I challenge you to do.
Thanks, Hank. Good seeing you again, always.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Good seeing you, Bob.
Bye.
Thank you, my
Take
friend.
care. Thanks so much.